You are listening to an Ark Media podcast.
So, Jonathan, what's your number this week?
The number is 6, as in 6 out of 80. That is 6 Israelis out of 80 winners of the Turing Prize, which is the sort of Nobel Prize for computer science. That is almost 10% of the entire winners of this prestigious award. Today, we have an episode that would feature a very interesting Israeli academician, and I thought this would be a worthy number, reflecting the might of Israeli mathematicians, computer scientists. So 6 out of 80.
Well, I'm competing with you on size alone. My number is 4. Don't be fooled by it. It's actually $4 trillion. That's the market cap. NVIDIA's new milestone that it just passed in the last few days. And we spoke at length about their big bet on Israel, their expansion plans there. And so I would say this is a pretty good friend for Israel to have in its backyard. Who wins?
Definitely. I would say you win. I mean, mine is looking backwards, yours looking forward. So I'm conceding this time.
I will happily take that win. Thank you. Welcome to What's Your Number from Ark Media. I'm Michal Evram.
I'm Jonathan Adiri.
Jonathan, it is close to 2 p.m. here in, wait for it, drum roll, I'm in Fargo, North Dakota.
That's it. Michal just buried the body in her trunk.
You betcha. That's what I need to say.
Exactly. It's a 9:45 p.m. Here in Israel. A lot of political turmoil in the last couple of hours. But other than that, as we spoke last week, seems like the fog of war is clearing out and the discussion on the day after is actually becoming a real conversation.
Yeah, and we'll get to a little bit of that, just a little bit of the takeaways from Bibi's recent visit to the White House. And by the way, I do think that we're breaking a record here by being, I'm going to venture and say we are the first ever podcast that's being recorded simultaneously from Fargo and from Tel Aviv. So, we should get one of those Turing prizes too, I think.
If any of our listeners know otherwise, they should let us know in the comments or in the email.
Please write in. Yeah. All right, we have a really exciting episode. Today we're interviewing Liran Shlush, who is Associate Professor at the Whitesman Institute of Science, Department of Molecular Cell Biology in Rehovot, my hometown. I have fond memories of collecting tadpoles at the Whitesman Institute. And I'm really, really excited to talk to him. He has had quite a month. His lab was in the building that received a direct hit from an Iranian missile in mid-June. And just days after, he and his research partner, Amos Tanai, whom we'll hear about as well, published a study that could have huge implications for early detection of leukemia. We're going to talk to him about what happened, the state of Israeli research, and rebuilding plans for the damaged labs at the Institute.
Yeah, I think this is going to be even a broader context of Israeli academia, right? 3 of the top universities in Israel predate the country. Some were born, like the Technion, in the early 20th century. Others in the 30s, the Hebrew U, and the Whitesman Institute. We are talking about numbers. Israel is the highest investor in R&D as share of GDP, 6.5%. Is invested predominantly by the private sector, but the funnel of scientific capacity actually comes through the Whitesman, Hebrew U, Tel Aviv University, Beersheba, and so on. Israel is home to what's called the Wolf Prize, which is the biggest predictor of the Nobel Prize. So this is an annual prize given at the Knesset to global scientists, and something like 70% of the winners of the Wolf Prize end up winning the Nobel Prize, specifically in chemistry. It is really a broader story of how the Israeli economy really relies on a very strong academia. I've been, as an entrepreneur, a big recipient of this talent in academia and have witnessed how strong we are in some of those areas that really take audacity to push forward the boundaries in AI and others. And, Professor Shlush is a humble person, but discovering leukemia through a simple blood test, which was the research piece that his lab published right after that Iranian missile fell. Literally, I think it was 48 hours later, in a peer-reviewed, one of the top journals in the world. is indeed groundbreaking basic science that's going to impact, many cancer patients worldwide.
Well, we'll get to Professor Shlush's story and hear more about his research in just a little while. But first, as usual, we're going to take a quick look at some of the week's pressing news, aka our big shorts, including some key numbers that should be on your radar, like the Windex. So stay with us. On to our big shorts. Yonatan, let's kick things off with the Windex. How are things looking?
So the not so secretive Windex anymore. After last week, we took a kind of look under the hood. Spilled the beans. I got some funny notes on Twitter and other places and shared, the fuller list. And we should do that at a later point. But the Windex is predominantly red this week. We had a flat week. NASDAQ and S&P, 0.5% more or less in the green for NASDAQ. Windex was 5.85 in the red on the week starting on July 7th. Predominantly, this is about a correction. In essence, those who've made the profits and rewards in the last couple of months with consecutive in the green Windex, chose to offload some of those profits. We've seen Mobileye, Nayax, and Lemonade after consecutive weeks lose double digits in the red share value. And we saw Wix, Monday, and eToro, again, companies that we've highlighted over the last few weeks for very nice gains, saw high single-digit price reductions. Makes sense. I would say when you kind of read through the reports, nothing major or nothing specific. It seems like, Wall Street is reaping the rewards of a very strong sort of Windex consecutive several weeks. I would say Palo Alto Networks accounting for almost a third of the entirety of the market cap, as we discussed last week, heavily reliant on the big five or big six cyber stocks, shed 7.15%. So that's very impactful on where the index is. I would say at the tail end, Elbit has been a safe haven, right? So you would expect Israeli defense tech to kind of keep its head above the water, and it has. It's remained flat, kind of in line with NASDAQ. So that's the week for the Windex. And again, I don't think there's anything to read in the data beyond a correction.
Yeah, and we did see some volatility in the markets overall, here in the United States. You mentioned the S&P and the NASDAQ being, net kind of neutral. But there were earlier last week, definitely things were looking down, renewed tariff fears, what's going to happen. Then it fizzled out and we saw things go back up, partly because of the excitement over AI. We will talk a little more about AI later on. But first, I want to get to United. We're probably all of us a little bit sick of this like on again, off again thing, weird toxic relationship that Israel now has with a lot of the airlines. But United is back, baby. At least for now, the airline, which has historically offered more flights to Israel than any other U.S.-based airline, says it's going to resume daily nonstop flights on July 21st. This is 10 days ahead of schedule. And this is also taking place, by the way, despite Israel still being at a level 3 travel advisory level, according to the U.S. Embassy. That's a reconsider travel category. And I'm bringing this up not only because I think we all care about this and because it's got a ripple effect, an obvious one, but also because one thing that we haven't talked about much when we've brought up some of the back and forth with the airlines is that there have been allegations that with United in particular, that some of the decisions and the reluctance to resume flights when things have flared up sort of after the fact that it's of United actually succumbing to the politics of its largest union, which represents flight attendants and other workers. Again, these are allegations. There's nothing, conclusive here. But by the way, United did in a statement that it made about the resumption of flights, did say that this was done in close consultation with the unions representing our flight attendants and pilots. So they went out of their way to say that. And I think that that's actually a meaningful note. And again, like bigger picture, the role of unions, which the teachers union, that's a whole nother thing. But we are seeing some, what I would categorize as anti-Israel sentiment from some of the larger unions in the United States. My question here is, if it is the case that unions have played a role in past decisions, pressure from unions should we be concerned about this?
we need to keep a very close kind of eye on this and understand, is this sort of, again, few and far apart, or does this require, more of a concerted effort and response? I am encouraged by the fact that prominent Jews and non-Jews seeing these kind of, blimps. I don't know how you call that game where you have a hammer and you have to like hit it, those
Whack-a-mole.
things that come
Whack-a-mole.
Exactly. So that's my approach to that right now. Like, not to wait it out and not kind of say, oh, it's just this organization or that, but kind of stand up to it. And I'm encouraged by the fact that I see leadership in the U.S., both Jewish and not, taking a stand and confronting that.
I think it's really important to be connecting those dots because these are not disparate things. They're part of a broader trend. Where it goes, who knows? But we should absolutely be watching it.
It is. For us focusing on Israeli economy, it's our as we spoke last week when we analyzed this central bank's notes on the interest. Israel's integration into the global economy is what drives the Israeli economy, right? So if this kind of picks up and becomes an issue, then it is a macroeconomic issue for Israel. It's not anecdotal.
Well, speaking of Israel's integration into the broader global economy, another piece of news, and this came out of Bibi's visit to D.C., Israel and the U.S. have signed a memorandum of understanding for AI and energy collaboration. And this agreement, which was formulated under the leadership of Energy Secretary Eli Cohen, is designed to advance cooperation in applying AI to strengthening energy grids, both in Israel and in the United States, and to encourage research, innovation, and the development of joint policies. Under the agreement, just another note here, regional projects, including IMEC, which I know we've talked about at length, and the Abraham Accords, also a hot topic for us, are going to be advanced, whatever that means. I do think it's an important note here that this is non-binding. It's an MOU, right? So what does it actually mean, Yonatan? What are you looking at here?
So let me take you behind the scenes on this one, because I think it's important. We chose this as a big short, not because it is binding. When you travel with the head of state, when we would travel to the White House or to the Blue House in Korea, you always have those you call a month in advance to all the government agencies. What do you have in line that we can declare at the trip? Is it a free trade agreement? Is it a visa issue and so on? So what you actually see here on display is not that important, but what does signify, and that's the reason we picked it up as a big short. AI, energy, these are the things that are talked about behind the scenes. That's what they chose to dedicate time from Prime Minister Netanyahu, the ambassadors, the secretaries, to discuss. And the reason this is critical is, one, we discussed Israel as a net exporter of energy, which is critical. Now the geopolitics around Syria, there's kind of a whiff of a normalization somewhere in September around, the UN General Assembly gathering. Part of that is, can Israel deliver natural gas through the pipeline that now goes to Jordan all the way to Homs and to Syria, right? So these energy dynamics are critical and the AI dynamics are critical. So the signal here, I would say three things about that. Beyond sort of the behind the scenes, is not that important, practically speaking. It's a symbolic thing. One, let's remember, last month in May, 2 months ago actually, the Biden poison pill at the tail end of the administration, the tiered approach, export control on AI infrastructure, which was horrendous for Israel's sort of long-term capacity to build AI, has been lifted. That's why this agreement has been signed as an MOU. That's why it gets the public appearance, because there is no tier 1, tier 2 anymore. This is critical. We have to understand, our listeners have to understand what we spoke of last week, the NVIDIA decision to double its size in Israel, to bet even bigger and more audaciously on Israeli talent in AI. That would have never happened if Israel was in tier 2, not to be trusted. Literally, that was the headline of tier 2 when it comes to silicon production. That's a big and important thing to say. The second piece is, Israel is on the verge, we heard it also from Yoav Shoam a couple of weeks ago, of deciding its national AI strategy. And part of that has to do with energy, and with AI, in terms of chips for kind of a supercomputer. And you multiply that and you think, your visit to Saudi, what we said about that and we said about the ecosystem, those connect between those two things, energy and AI. So to summarize, practically speaking, this doesn't really mean a lot. It's a trick that, state visits kind of go through. What it does signify is both countries identify a linkage between AI and energy as critical. Two, let's celebrate and let's put it out there that America trusts Israel when it comes to AI infrastructure, as opposed to the January Biden administration decision. And number three, practically speaking, my anticipation is if the government stands and there are no surprises, in the next couple of months, we're going to see a dynamic towards the broadening of the Abraham Accords. Energy and AI are going to play a big role there.
Well, the Middle East is never a boring place, but we have an amazing interview to get to, so stay with us. Moving on to our long play, our weekly deep dive. Today, we're talking to Liran Shlush, Associate Professor at the Whitesman Institute of Science, Department of Molecular Cell Biology in Rehovot. Liran, welcome to What's Your Number?
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me.
I want to dive right into the events of June 15th and have you just kind of walk us through the events of the day, of the night, as you experienced them.
Yeah. So my very good friend, Shalev, who is also the head of the department, called me and told me that a rocket hit our own building. We are friends from being children, and we grew up in the same street, and our labs is just one by the other. A little bit of nepotism, and then he calls me and tells me that our labs are on fire, and what should we do? Should I come? And then he knew that we both have precious samples frozen in the lab. So he asked me whether he can take ours. He took them, and I told him that I'm coming, and I joined him. And then I came, so that was around 3:30 or 4.
So right after the missile hit.
Yeah. 30 minutes. It was not allowed to come. I came. And I live in Herzliya. I don't live in Rehovot, so it took me like 35 minutes. And I came and I see the fire, and then we started working until almost like 6-7 hours. We moved all the freezers from all of our department, other departments, tried to take other equipment that we could take until someone really kicked us out. Like they told us, you cannot be here. And they were laughing at us. I was with my sandals and shorts, and it was all fire. And the water that were on the street were pretty hot from the fire. And the safety guys arrived at some point, and they just throw us away. But until then, it was very Israeli. We just did whatever we could.
What were you most concerned about losing, and to what extent were your concerns actually realized here?
I'm not attached to buildings, neither to equipment. I was concerned about the samples that we are collecting. We are conducting a large international and Israeli clinical trial. And the samples from that trial were frozen in one of our freezers, and we didn't analyze them yet. So that would have been a loss of a year of work and a lot of resources. So I was really concerned about these samples, and then I was concerned about the students and what will happen to them. And the other things were I was less bothered. I know that other people were, everyone is attached to us different things. So I was really concerned about my samples or our samples and others also. So we rescued almost the entire department samples.
That's actually one of the things I wanted to ask about is the other labs. What did you see there, and what was the destruction in yours compared to some of the others?
Something like 11 labs were completely destroyed, 9/11 style, like ashes. My lab was on the other side of the same building that got destroyed, and a lot of things were destroyed there, but not everything. So we were able later, in the coming days later, we were able to gradually get more and more stuff. So we were, I would say, mildly affected, while others were completely affected, and I can feel the empathy towards their loss. It's significantly bigger.
So Liran, Tell us a bit about your lab and the broader Whitesman Institute. Sort of, what gets you busy? Because I think people don't realize how the people at the institute are busy with basic research that's very pertinent to global health. This is not about an Israeli institute. The focus of the institute and the teams is indeed global. So if you can share a bit about, the specifics of your research, but also I think it is very indicative of what, the entire teams at Whitesman are busy with.
Well, the Whitesman, many people probably would say that about their own institute, but I'm not objective, but it is a unique place. It combines the good of Israeli and Israelis and then the beauty of science, done in a ambitious and I would say bold way. There's no limits. Like that's the first thing that you feel when you come to the Whitesman. I was educated at a Technion, a very Spartan institute. And you come to the Whitesman and it looks like a child coming to a candy store and everything is possible. And that's the feeling from the first day until today. It's a unique atmosphere where you truly have the feeling that you can achieve everything. Just use your brain and effort. And that's what people do at the Whitesman. They ask questions, try to answer them in the best way they can with almost every possible resource. Resources are not a limit. That's what they tell you. And just you be bold, take initiative, do things out of the box.
But specifically, you're doing leukemia, right? So your basic research is pertinent to people, suffering from cancer. This is not about hitting the Whitesman Institute. It is also something, when you hit the Whitesman Institute, our listeners may think, oh, it's a university, it's an Israeli university. The research you guys do has already over the last, decades, helped people live a healthier lives, helped computers become faster and so on and so forth. Can you share a bit maybe about your specific research and why those samples were so dear and precious?
I must say I'm a scientist, but also I'm a physician, and I was brought as a physician, and in my very deep DNA, I'm a physician, and I must say that first and foremost, the Whitesman is important and dear, but it is important to say that no one got hit from those two bad missiles. And that's actually the most important thing. So if you ask me, should the rockets fall on Bat Yam or Whitesman, they should fall on Whitesman. And that's important to say. Saying all that, for the Iranians, I think that it was better that it fall on the Whitesman, because the moral damage to educated people in Israel, and I saw it in the reactions to a piece that was published a few days later. Some people, I wouldn't say everyone, but some people, for them, the Whitesman is a symbol for light, for goodness, for the future. And the Iranians tried to destroy our future. They tried to damage it. But, scientists are resilient because they usually face failure like 99% of the time. So I believe that the resilience will come through also this time. Specifically for my research, I must be even more resilient than the average because I treat patients that usually die. Leukemia is a devastating disease. I'm still a leukemia doctor. I see patients twice a week. And what we try to do is basically we're studying the very early stages of leukemia to try and prevent it and develop novel technologies that will make leukemia patients' life easier.
You mentioned very kind of modestly and in passing that something was published after the labs were hit. So I want to hear more about that, because the research that you've been working on for years with your partner, and I'm sure with many others who are involved, is pretty groundbreaking. So talk a little bit about the problem that you were trying to solve here and the significance of the study that you've been working on and published recently, just a few days after the lab was hit.
The problem was how we can replace the bone marrow analysis, which is not a very nice test to go through, with a simple blood test through the characterization of the heterogeneity or the variability in stem cells in the peripheral blood, using novel tools and novel methods, which need to combine mathematical capabilities with biological reasoning. We wanted to try and see what's going on in the bone marrow by looking on the blood, by looking on stem cells, which are the cell that create all blood cells that are circulating in the blood. In order to do that, we had to first characterize what happens in the normal population to be able to define abnormal.
What you're basically saying is leukemia being such an aggressive cancer, the earlier you discover, the better. And early discovery today is dependent on bone marrow, which is expensive, painful, complex, a bit risky, and in big numbers. So the ability to draw a signal to noise, right, from a simple blood test is very impactful on survivability and mortality. And so, this is a breakthrough in terms of discoveries, and that's exactly the point of sort of our episode today. Is that, as you said, the rockets hit Whitesman Institute, they hit Israeli, facilities, but the injury, if you will, is to an extent on global science. It's not just, science knows no borders, and the stuff that you guys do and already have done in the last decades has been so impactful on so many people's lives. And so this early discovery piece is critical.
I have a question on that note. Yonatan, you touched on the global collaboration and how this is impactful on a global level. Since October 7th, we have heard a lot of threats and boycotts or potential boycotts of Israeli academic institutions. And so I'm just wondering, in your view and from your real experience, what is the state of global collaboration with the Institute and other research centers, of course, in Israel? Like, what does it actually look like on the inside?
Yeah, I'm not the one to complain. Maybe there are some naysayers or people out there. I usually ignore them or put my pink glasses. I see good. I hope I see a lot of good people that still want to work with us. I see a lot of good people who understand what we do. I must say, I deal with, I think, above average intellectual people that don't take things for granted. So maybe that's the reason. But I mainly see the goodness and people understanding. I must say, I also myself see the bad things in what we do. It's so I'm still under reserve duty, and not everything that I saw in Gaza was to my taste. But taken together, good usually will win, and I think we are on the good side of things, and most people understand that.
It's fair to say also, I think, for some of our listeners who don't know, Machon Weizmann, as the Technion and the Hebrew U, have been established before the State of Israel.
Indeed.
Machon Ziv,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Before Weizmann, right?
1934.
1934, the famous war of languages in the Technion. Hebrew was a dormant language. It was a very fierce battle. Does Hebrew even have the right words, given that the language was dormant and only has the vocabulary of the Bible, right? All the scientific discoveries since the Bible through the early 20th century did not have words in Hebrew. So the tradition behind Israeli academia, this dynamic that you're describing, is really very much apparent at Whitesman, at Hebrew U, and they predated the state. And is it fair to say that still Whitesman is sort of the highest kind of representation in global grants relative to its size? I mean, is it still sort of the way it was a decade ago and before, a big winner of the European Council and NSF and AH and others? Is it still sort of a
correct.
prominent winner of global grants?
Yeah, that's correct. So the Weitzman is a very good place to do science, and there are a lot of good scientists, and that's being judged objectively by others, and so that was not affected. I must say, my friends and myself, we all submitted those ERC grants. I think I was treated fairly, just by facts, science. I see why we can get criticized as a nation and as a government and what we do, but I must say that the Weitzman, I hope, was not significantly. I think was not significantly affected by this. But I am on the far side of optimism among other.
Taking a step back for a minute and going back to Iran, this attack on the institute was, part of Iran's response to Israel's attack on their nuclear research and knowledge, right? And Israel's strategy was not just to hit the hardware, but to try and erase some of the knowledge by hitting the scientists. And luckily, you are here with us today, which is great. But my question is, like, in a modern day lab today, where I'm guessing a lot of the research and the data is backed up in the cloud, et cetera. You talked about the samples. Like, what else is at stake here when there's a physical attack on the physical labs?
Yeah, so I would say everything who is alive or has the potential to be alive. So that's cells that are frozen, mice, flies, rabbits, so all these model animals that are alive. And if they were dead, that would have we would have been a huge prize. I know that some scientists have lost zebrafish that research is done on, and flies that are gone forever and will take many years to recreate. That's everything that is alive. Everything that is dead is easily replaceable. I actually see the live things and the moral thing. There was a moral effect on scientists and citizens. I saw scientists crying, and it will take them a long time to get out of this crisis. Some people, that's their lifetime achievement, and they were devastated. That's a moral effect. These are the things that are hard to replace.
What are you doing now in the meantime, and what are others who lost their labs doing in order to continue research?
What I'm doing now is very Israeli and very Whitesman. Like a day after, someone already offered me to come to their lab. The vice president of the institute, and then weeks after, I got half of his lab, and so did all the other scientists who lost their labs. The management, together with the head of the departments, just redistributed all the space, and we just people gave away half of their space. I think it is unique. I'm not sure that would have happened so easily and so smoothly in other places, in a welcoming way and fun, I would say.
And we should note that the estimates so far, at least, are that the cost of the damages is around 2 billion shekels. So a lot to be done in the coming years. And I know there are several campaigns to help raise the funds for that. But Liran, just in wrapping, it's very touching how you're talking about the kind of the morale effect on the scientists. And there was a video that made the rounds after the missile attack, and I believed it was your research partner, Amos, sitting down to play.
I filmed him.
You're the one who filmed him. Okay, well,
we were working together, getting out those freezers from the basement, and then we were waiting for the truck to come so we could load the next set of freezers, and then there was a break, so we went one floor up, and he played. He's a brilliant musician also, and it was fun.
Well, for our listeners who have not seen it or heard it, we're going to play the audio. So let's go ahead and do that. It's just, again, so touching. He's there wearing a helmet, smiling.
Yeah, his bicycle helmet.
And the title of the video is "You Can't Stop the Music." So I just want to ask you, what did that moment mean to you? Mean to both of you?
Yeah, Amos and me have a lot of discussions about the discrepancy between my optimism and what he calls realism, and I would say masochism. And I think at that moment, also that through that morning, when we did what we did, and he told me, I would have taken you as a sergeant in my platoon. and it was it was it was fun. We did what we needed to do. We didn't stay home. We came. We did what we could do, and that's a spirit. I think even the most pessimist and the exceptional optimist did exactly the same things. So we were happy, I think.
There's a message here also for the listeners and the people who are sort of part of our journey. I saw it with my kids because they saw the movie. It was in the news here in Israel. It is a very sort of startup nation classic. If you had to imagine the epitome of what it looks like, why is Israel, does it have the chutzpah, the audacity to drive global, breakthroughs in research that are of global significance? This is a great story. I saw my kids when my kids saw the video and heard the story of those two scientists, who the first thing they did was to go and save the samples. And why? Because it means something for the world. It means something for their research. And this is inspiring for scientists. I think it is inspiring for society, for community. I saw it with my own kids. So, thank you for the optimism, but also thank you for taking that moment and creating a moment that is now, I guess, bigger than both of you in a way, right? It's a moment in history. It is a picture that will be there. I think that when people will look back at the war, and specifically in the 12-day war, as President Trump called it, this will be one of those moments that illustrate the, like the Blitz in the UK that has those pictures of, keep calm and keep walking, right? And so I can tell you, at least for my family, for my kids, this was very much an inspiration and a true representation of the spirit that we are all proud of.
Thank you.
Liran, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and your research. And it was just a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you.
The same.
Thank you very much.
Well, we began our show with the numbers of the week, and we are going to wrap with the words of the week. And today's words are from a recent opinion piece in Bloomberg that was titled, "Israel is now peerless in the Middle East and markets." And this was by Matthew Winkler. By the way, the Financial Times, the FT ran a very similar piece, kind of same theme. And I'm going to read just the opening lines of the Bloomberg piece.
They both took numbers from What's Your Number over the last 3 episodes. I think we can...
We basically wrote it for them, but let's give credit where credit is due. There are a lot of data points there that obviously we knew we put out there, but it really put everything together. So I'm going to read just the opening lines from the Bloomberg one. Anyone wondering how much Israel gained from its 12-day war with Iran can find an answer in financial markets. The nation's currency, debt, and equity lead the world in terms of appreciation since the conflict began on June 13th. And it says, according to data compiled by Bloomberg and What's Your Number? Let's face it, you get a lot of conflicting themes in the media, of course, but I thought this was a really important one, again, that we saw in some, very major financial publications.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, that's why when we formed our podcast, we called it What's Your Number, right? Numbers win. And these numbers, when they're robust and week on week, give you a signal for investors worldwide, for Israelis who make decisions about, their next, big lifetime decision for a family, for a household. With the right government, I would say decision-making. Again, exactly what the chairman of the bank said last week. This could be the opening of really an incredible growth era for Israel, and being recognized as such by sheer numbers by Bloomberg and FT. I think is a great development and is a great way to kind of summarize. And following on what Liran Shlush said, I think that's a great way to end our episode.
A note on optimism on both counts. Agreed.
Exactly.
All right. That is it for today's show. Thank you for tuning into Ark Media's What's Your Number? And we hope you found it interesting. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe, rate, review. You know the drill. But most importantly, please share it with others who you think will find it interesting. If you want to make suggestions or share your feedback, please reach out to us at whatsyournumber@arkmedia.org.
What's Your Number is produced by Ilan Ben-Attar and edited by Michal Evram. Sound and video editing is by Martin Huergo.
Our theme music is by Midnight Generation. I'm Yonatan Adiri.
And I'm Michal Avram. See you back here next week. This podcast offers general business and economic information and is not a comprehensive summary for investment decisions. It does not recommend or solicit any investment strategy or security.